missing someone. Love with all your heart. Missing someone. Love with heart.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So this week I have a returning client who wanted to go a little bit lighter. So a little bit about her color history is in the past we've done various types of balayages, and then she took a long break, and then we kind of went a little bit darker. So on the very ends of her hair she's gonna have some old highlights that have been darkened by me, and then you can also see she's gotten all of her color. She told me that she went to Korea and she got her hair done there, and because you can see the warmth and line of demarcation from her virgin hair to the ends, I can totally tell that they used permanent color, because the hair and the color that was previously done around that time is all pretty much solid. Usually if they were to use like a demi-permanent, it wouldn't create that very harsh solid line and make everything all one color. So that's a good indication. Like if a client is unsure if the last previous hairdresser used permanent color, you can definitely tell within the light and how it grew out and how it faded if they did use permanent color. And essentially when they use the permanent color, it kind of changes the level of their natural hair. Like if I were to use like a demi on her virgin, it wouldn't really do much because her natural hair is really dark. So it would really only affect the highlighted areas, and the only way to really change the virgin hair that's so dark as she is right now is to really use permanent color. That's the only way you're going to lighten it, and that's why I can totally tell that the previous color that was done, it did lighten her virgin hair all over and color the old highlights that were on the very ends. So I'm going to be going in and doing my signature balayage technique for her because she wants to be lighter, and then she also wants to have some dimension. One of the reasons why I'm not a huge fan of doing like an Oliver color like this for brunettes especially is because it doesn't really give too much dimension. I feel like the only way you're going to really get those beautiful pops of highs and lows is to do a balayage or to do some sort of highlighting technique to create those really beautiful highs and lows. You could obviously do like a brown tone, but it'll just look like a all one-toned brown tone, and I feel like in my personal preference I prefer a brunette that is more on the dimensional side and then fades out really pretty. The other reason why I don't usually do an Oliver color for browns is because on natural levels like that are 6 and below, such as my client's like a level 3, I would say naturally, whenever you lift the virgin hair with permanent hair color to get to like a lighter shade of brown, at first the color could come out like nice and rich and like chocolatey, but once the color is like all washed out, I would say in about 6 to 8 weeks, that's when you really start to see those really red and orange tones, and that's goes for all permanent color that's kind of at this level, because at that level what lives there is the red and orange tones. So when you're depositing those colors into your hair, essentially what's in that tube has a lot of warmth in it, and so you're depositing that onto the virgin hair as you're trying to lift it out. So that's why it tends to fade out very warm, and that's just not my favorite way to do a brunette. But I mean, if a client is dead set on doing a very solid tone without any dimension, then that would be the perfect time to use Oliver color. But most of my clients do like to have some sort of dimension and pops, and when they curl their hair, they like to see the different variations of tone. So I prefer doing foils and then toning everything with like a demi-permanent in the end. So I've done the quick foils around the hairline and the back of the nape, and then I'm taking my signature center parting down the middle of her head and just doing slices. So I'm doing slices because I want to do very high impact foiling technique. I don't want to weave it because she has all dark, and if I start to weave her hair, I'm going to start losing some of that brightness, and I would have to add a lot more foils in the hair. So essentially, to kind of like save time and to really get her as light as possible, I'm just directly going to be going in with slices. And you might be thinking, like, slices, they can give a really harsh grow, especially because I am taking a center part section and just going horizontal up the head from the back. And yes, that does, and it can give some harsh lines when you pull out all the foils, but the way that I kind of marry and mix everything together to where it blends in is I always use a shadow root to kind of blend all these slices all together, and then it just really blends in and looks really pretty. And then as they come in for touch-ups, I do adjust my placement and the size of my slices accordingly so that it does give a softer grow up. But because this is like our first session going back to light, that's why I am doing such a heavy placement. So she had some bangs, so the area where she had her bangs, I did do a few weaves there, and then even around the hairline around her face, I did weave that part because I didn't want it to be too harsh of a line when it grows out. But after that, I did another weave around the top of her ear, and then I'm going to go directly back into my slicing pattern. When I'm doing this technique, I'm probably doing about like a 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch spacing in between my slices, and that's going to give me a more dimensional look. It's not going to give me a full blonde type of balayage look. It is going to have a good amount of dimension because we are leaving a good amount of dark in between each slice. And then really quick for my products, I'm using the Danger Jones lightener for her transformation. I have totally switched over to this lightener and I love it. I feel like it lifts really well, and I never really have that kind of like liquidy feel with it. It has like a very thick consistency to it, and sometimes like I used to use the Blonde Me Schwarzkopf lightener, and sometimes I feel like that would get a little bit on the runny side as it starts to kind of lift out some hair that has buildup on it or anything like that. And this one, I feel like it doesn't really do that. I feel like it kind of stays on the thicker side, yet it's still more powerful in my opinion. So I've just kind of switched over, and the hair honestly feels really good after using it because it does have bonder inside the products too. So I never really have to worry about the integrity of the hair as long as I know when to rinse out these foils. I always feel like I have my client's hair feeling pretty good after a full transformation of like tip outs and balayage like this. So as I go in and start doing her tip outs, I'm pretty much just going to be focusing on doing tip outs around her face and around the front, just to kind of give it a little bit something extra to where it looks a little bit lighter as it gets towards the front. I feel like it gives a really pretty transition to that lighter front to the more dimensional ends. And a little bit of a tip out, a tip on my tip outs is I like to tease and then I like to weave. And I feel like the teasing and weaving method really does help diffuse a beautiful tip out. And then another technique that I like to do is after I tease and then do my weaves, I will over direct it towards the front of their face. So you can see I kind of turned her and I'm really painting in front of her face instead of where that tip out lives. And the over direction is also going to help with diffusing those lines as well. So I feel like it's just doing these extra little tiny little tips for your tip outs. That's a tongue twister. Tips for your tip outs. it just makes it a lot easier, and it helps like really diffuse those areas and just create a lot of softness, because even when I go back in and do like redo her roots and then we lighten up the hair that we left out this time, it doesn't really make a huge like I can't really distinguish where my tip outs are because it's so well blended within everything else. So I am now going in. I have my YS Park diffuser, and I love this diffuser because it's packable and just, it's amazing. If you guys haven't used it before and you guys have that big bulky one, I just love having a packable one because it just makes life a lot easier. Anyways, so I am using the diffuser because I've noticed, as I'm showing you guys right now, that her virgin hair, obviously that part was going to lift up really pretty, but then the mid area, you can see where the permanent color is on her previous virgin hair is lifting pretty angry. And then you'll notice that the ends of her hair are lifting pretty well because that's where her old highlights were that we darkened long time ago. So we have gotten 3 different levels of lift here. We have that virgin area, and then we have the previous hair like permanent color that was on virgin hair, and then we have the previous permanent color that was on highlighted hair that's on the ends. So I'm using the YS Park diffuser to kind of just apply concentrated heat into that mid area where it's a little bit angrier than the ends to kind of catch it up. And now that I'm pulling out her foils, you can see that it did a really good job at like catching up the ends to the root. And now we're kind of rinsing them out as they have reached pretty much like a level 9, I would say, because we're going to be toning her down. She wants to be like a more neutral, but more neutral ashy side of brown, and I have the perfect formulation. I'm going to be using the Danger Jones gloss toners that are very new on the market, and I feel like they are just honestly really great at creating beautiful ash tones that look on the natural side. So another tip for my tip outs is when I take my tip outs out, I will rinse just the ends of the tip outs where I've placed the lightener, and I start brushing out the hair before getting the teased part wet. And I feel like this has made my life so much easier. It's so much easier to brush out because as soon as you wet the areas that are teased, it's like game over. Then it starts to pull and it's just like no one's happy and it takes forever. So brushing out the tease before you even wet that area is key, and I feel like it just saves me so much time and everyone's happy. No one's pulling and we're not worrying about whether or not we're yanking on her hair. So now I'm going in with the Danger Jones gloss toners, and like I was saying earlier, these gloss toners, they're really great, and I'm going to tell you why, because I have just started switching over from using the other like liquid demi-eyes and the Redken shades, and I feel like this one, it took me a bit to kind of get used to. I will say it is a little bit on the different side. Like, you know how every color line has their own little thing to make them a little bit like what makes them stand out and what makes them special. And what makes it this gloss toner so special is one, the consistency. I feel like it's like so glossy and so conditioning when you apply it on the hair, and then the consistency also helps with the application in a way, because I feel like you're able to like spread it a little bit easier. Even though I'm using like the same amount, I just feel like it just covers and blends a lot smoother than the other ones that I've used. And then the other thing is the pigment is really good as far as like canceling out warmth and having that beautiful depth when you need it. It's really great at that. And so I will say some of the colors can be on the ashier side if you're used to like shades. But just look at the swatches and just get familiar with them and just keep practicing with them, because even though this is a new color line and I'm getting used to it, I feel like it has so much potential for me to love it, because I feel like it just makes the hair feel so nice that I really want to play with it a little bit more and get more familiar and create more different formulas that really work for me. I feel like I had to kind of step back and then just look at the swatches and think a little bit differently than I would normally for other color lines, because the pigment and shine is all there. It's just the tones are just a little bit different from what I'm used to, but I feel like it's kind of fun in a way, because now I have to kind of like retrain myself and just think a little bit outside the box to kind of reformulate really pretty formulations for my clients now. And I feel like it's paid off, because you can see later that I've formulated at the root. I did like a 5-0 with a 6-0 at the root, and then on the mids and ends we did a 6-0, 7-0, and a 7-8. Alrighty guys, so here is her finished look, and honestly, I was so obsessed with it. I wanted this color for myself, because look how shiny her hair looked, considering that we were lifting out some permanent color in that mid area, and you even saw as her hair was lifting that it wasn't lifting evenly either, and the fact that the lightener came through and I knew where to strategically place some heat in those areas, it looks so even. And I feel like the fact that I took that extra step to just isolate some heat in certain areas that it needed, this is going to fade out really pretty, because if I would have just left that and just let the 3 zones process at different levels, then I feel like when her hair fades, she'd have like an orange band in the middle of her hair. And I feel like just taking the extra step for that made a huge difference. And then even though we were putting heat in certain areas, it didn't get compromised, because again, like I said, this lightener that we were using today was really good. It had that bonder inside. I wasn't worried about it. And then on top of that, I knew that I was going to be using the Danger Jones gloss toners, and I knew how hydrating they were going to be on her hair, so I was not worried at all. Alrighty guys, that is it for this week's episode. Thank you guys so much for watching and tuning in, and as always, I will talk to you guys next week.